Hi, I'm Carrie, and today I'm talking about self-serving bias. According to Wikipedia, a self-serving bias is any cognitive or perpetual process that is distorted by the need to maintain and enhance one's self-esteem, or the tendency to perceive oneself in an overly favorable manner. We ascribe our success to our own abilities that we use and put forth, and when we get negative feedback, we ascribe those values to our external factors. This theory was first brought to the attention in the 60s and the early 70s, when the research of this topic began to grow and people were becoming concerned with it. Then in 1971, there was a fear that emerged that the hypothesis would prove that to be incorrect, much like the perpetual defense hypothesis that was done by Dixon. During the development, it was the research of attribution bias by Fritz Heider that found that in ambiguous situations, people would end up making it so in order for their self-esteem and their viewpoint. Many people will look at their successes and their failures in this theory. A study done on self-serving bias in a relational context suggests it is due to the idea that a close relationship can place limits on an individual's enhancement tendencies. It can make the individual more modest, and when in a close relationship, it is less likely used for that relationship for his or her own benefit. One example would be if you had a math test. You get the test back, you get an A. A positive side would be then that you studied, that you're really smart in math, so it was all you that did it. The negative would be if you get your test back and you got a C. Then we end up blaming the teacher. They added things on there, they didn't go over everything. So, with this example, you do good and your self esteem is raised. You are proud of yourself. And the bad side is that if you get a bad score, then you put the blame on someone else, like your teacher, and making it their fault that you did bad. Instead of maybe thinking if you got the bad score, maybe you should have studied or asked questions on things that you didn't understand. According to Psychology Today, depression and self-serving bias can go hand in hand. They state that sometimes when people are depressed or have low self-esteem, their attribution style is flipped. They will attribute positive events to chance or external help and attribute negative events to their own character. If someone is feeling irritable, they might attribute negative events to a combination of internal and external factors. I suck, so everybody sucks. Overall, research on the self-serving bias and depression suggests that the bias isn't completely flipped in people with depression, but that the magnitude of the bias is less than in the general population. It's smaller. If you were in a relationship and the other person was to go out and cheat on you, then you would take it as a personal fault, thinking that it had everything to do with you, and then it would in fact lower your self-esteem. Then there are some that would put the blame on the other person, that they had a problem and that they made the choice to go out and cheat with the other person. We use self-serving bias in everyday lives, I feel. We use it when things happen, whether it be with our children, with significant others, at work, at school, or any other relationships that we have. We can use it to make ourselves look and feel good, or we can do it to either make or feel like it's the other person's fault and make them feel bad and make them look bad. Some tips that I found for avoiding the self-serving attribution bias are the following. Mindful awareness. It can help when you learn about common cognitive bias. You can start to notice yourself doing them, and then you can self-autocorrect it. Rumination causes people to think about the causes of problems over and over and over again without moving forward. You can use these types of cognitive behavioral therapy techniques for reducing rumination. Research done on self-serving bias shows that in 2004, meta-analysts examined the relationship between the self-serving bias and the psychopathology, including depression and anxiety. In 2011, studies used a slightly different definition of the self-serving bias to relate it to the climate change policy. The definition used here is a bias towards thinking what benefits you is also fair. While reading on self-serving bias, I think we all have and use it in some part of our lives. And I'm sure we don't even notice when we do it or when we use it. it can be harder for the individual to suffer from depression and anxiety, I found out. Coming up next, Jordan will describe cultural differences.